Meet you downstairs in a bar in her. Your rolled up sleeves and your skull t-shirt. You said, why did you do with him today? He'll snuff me out like I was Tanqueray. 'Cause you're my fellow, my guy. Hand me your Stella and fly. By the time I'm at the door, you're 10 men down like Roger Moore. I cheated myself like I know I would. I told you I was trouble. Yeah, you know I'm no good.
Well, this is actually an important initiative for the government because essentially we are saying quite clearly that the creative industries are going to form a much more important part of the economy than perhaps hitherto we've acknowledged. So we're saying quite seriously, now is the time to look at the creative industries and consider them as part of a mainstream sector of the economy.
I think that the world is moving incredibly quickly. I think 6 months in today's business environment and media environment is probably 10 years of what it would have been in my father's day in terms of how business and how media changes and moves. So I'm particularly interested and committed to doing something and talking and learning.
I cheated myself like I know I would. I told you I was trouble. You know I'm no good. Yeah.
I nominated her because she's an example of what I feel is great British talent, both as a songwriter as well as a performer, and someone who is quite rare insofar as her creation and her music went on to be incredibly successful, both artistically as well as commercially, all around the world.
What I'm really fascinated by is just bringing together people from all sorts of creative industries. That's really interesting to me, so that we can all sort of dig down and figure out what are the things that are common to all of us.
If you make compelling, entertaining programming that people end up starting to watch in 10 years, 15 years' time, because it's good, they're good stories, the stories are good, people will learn and people will understand more about what the UAE is and what not only the UAE but the whole of the Arab world is.
The idea of bringing design into the sort of forefront of social change is really powerful. I think it's time for the creative industry to rethink itself. I think that the idea of creativity is emerging in a very different sense. You look at the YouTubes of the world and all of the social media things, they're really amplifying what it means to be a creative these days. And I think it's time for the design industry to really embrace that.
Well, it's a brilliant film. It's a real love letter to Liverpool is the way it's been described, and for anybody from the city, it's really kind of indulgent viewing, but it's great. So it sums up a lot of my what matters to me.
Well, there's a real opportunity to exploit the internet and technology generally to allow perhaps otherwise forgotten, disenfranchised communities to showcase, in a sense, the entrepreneurial, creative, positive flair coming out of places like Africa, which generally aren't necessarily celebrated in traditional media.
What we're trying to do is to get people who are successful in the creative industries together so they can talk about it, and to get a creative hub going, because people tend to exist in isolation.
Cross-fertilization is a very powerful idea. I think that co-creation is a very powerful idea. I'm going to encourage us this evening to take this conversation outside of this room, though, and into the real world, where I think it absolutely has to belong. So I think it's up to all of us to sort of look for other mechanisms to co-create with the real consumers out there.